coach. This life is laughing, right? This is Grinch, the therapy bird. Anyway, how are y'all doing this morning? I'm going to give y'all a few minutes to get on here and feed this algorithm. What we're going to be talking about today is what if. We had an interesting discussion on Monday night about what if. There was a lot of what ifs that come in. I love these lives that I get to do. So thank you for all of you who have subscribed to this channel, whether you subscribed 5-6 years ago, 5-6 months ago, 5-6 weeks ago, 5-6 days ago. Much appreciation to you. Thank you for choosing to spend your time with me, because I know that there's other places that you could be. So thank you so much. So in talking about what if this morning, have you ever noticed that most what ifs aren't very hopeful? Good morning, Epic. I'm glad that you're here. We're going to kind of expand upon what we talked about on Monday night about these what ifs. Remember Monday night we were talking about, oh, what if this, what if that, and we don't know. So navigating through life's uncertainties, and that's what I get on here for, is because I know that navigating through life's uncertainties, a lot of us are trying to strategize, and we're trying to anticipate what's going to happen next. And so this is where our what ifs may not appear to be too hopeful. How are you doing this morning, Epic? So we're going to discuss that, because usually a lot of people's what ifs are like, good morning, Luna. How are you doing today? We're going to expand on the what ifs from Monday night today, this morning. Pretty good. All right, good. It's Wednesday, y'all. So I want y'all to think about today, with it being Wednesday. If you don't know what Wednesday come from, it's like it got named from a Celtic god, Odin, and so it's about wonderment. And that's what we're talking about today, is wonderment with these what ifs. Is most of, like I said, the what ifs are usually catastrophizing. They're not really filled with hope. And that's how we might have learned. What if this happens? What if that happens? A lot of times when we were kids and we were told, no, you can't do this. We talked about autonomy on Monday night, and we're talking, kids told at 2, you can't do this. What if this happens? What if that happens? Usually when we say why, it's what if, right? So this is how we've learned to process, is it's usually the what ifs going towards not hopeful. What if I fail? What if they leave? What if I lose everything? These are some of the questions. And for years we thought that those thoughts were our reality, or at least I did. And so, my therapist, I've told some of y'all have heard me say, my therapist asking me, Stacy, can't you imagine anything good? And I'd be like, I don't have an imagination, because I didn't realize that the catastrophizing and those what ifs were part of what was causing my central nervous system to stay active, to stay overactive, to anticipate and to strategize things that were going to coming at me and coming to me. It's what if they do this? What if they do that? Then I'm trying to already strategize, and half the times they don't do that, right? So learning to have an imagination. So we talked about getting curious. I like to list of both sides. What if it goes to shit, and what if I pull it off? I know, right? So it's about learning to train ourselves to have that childlike curiosity. When we were children, we start that autonomy at 2 years old. Then we start, being curious about things as a child. And it's so cool when we get to get curious about things. So getting curious instead of being fearful, there's 2 different things. So, it's on the same wavelength, but one's positive energy and one is not. So, I learned that I did have an imagination. Fear and faith both ask us to imagine something that hasn't happened yet, that we can't see. The fear of imaginings of what could go wrong, fear of imaginings of what, could go right. So it's about those what ifs and learning to navigate those what ifs. Neither knows the future, right? We're trying to predict the future. We're trying to make sure that things turn out the way that we want it to turn out. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But when it does, after we've expended all this energy, we can feel relief, but we may not feel achievement. Does that make sense? I don't. So when we live in survival mode, we're always looking for instant relief. That's in response to Hornet's comment. So through people, food, work, shopping, addictions, or control, looking for that relief. So we need to play the tape through though. So we're going to talk about playing the tape through. We're also going to talk about, exploring these what ifs. And so today I want you to know that what if everything falls apart? Try asking a different question, because sometimes things do fall apart. Most of the things that have fallen apart in my life, or at least half of them, I did not predict. The worst of them, I did not predict, right? So we want to think that we're intuitive and predicting things when we're really running on fears, those what if fears. Here I am, darling. Here I am. I got my makeup on and I'm ready to go. I've had a busy and productive morning this morning. I know that some of y'all may or may not care about this, but I woke up at 3 this morning. I got up on that rooftop. Thank you, darling. I got up on that rooftop. I did my prayers, or talking to I talked to the elements up there. I'm just grateful to be able to get up, get out of bed. There are so many people who struggle with getting up and getting out of bed. And there for about a month, I didn't want to get out of bed, and look at the stars. And I don't know what was, hello, Unreal. So I don't know what was up with that, but I got up a few mornings, but I was getting up later. I have hazel eyes. I don't know what color they are right now. There's my glasses off. So I did get the non-glare glasses, but look, Kim likes them. Y'all tell me what you think. Tell me what you think. So she's like, I like those non-glare glasses, but they get heavy after a while because they're metal. These are plastic. And last night I thought, I look like, anyway, this is the non-glare glasses. So we're talking about the what ifs and the fears. No, I'm not zooming. This isn't about my eyes today. This isn't about my eyes. And we don't, okay. Let me, your eyes, your glasses are the business. What do you think about these glasses, Epic and Pam? Thank you, Nafatu Lutfi. Lutfi. Thank you. So, which ones? Black ones or these? Thank you, Luna. So we're talking about the what ifs, and we're going to go down the rabbit hole of the what ifs today, because I write, stuff, and then we're going to summarize it. Okay. Thank you, Pam. So what if everything works out better than I imagined? I had to learn this, but it was a process. It wasn't just like I decided this day, because I used to make those split, those knee-jerk decisions. You like both? Hi, Jonas. So what if everything works out better than I imagined? This is the thing. So it could work out when we learn to train our brain to say, what if it works out better than I imagined? So let me take you down my rabbit hole here. We're going to talk about how this come about we're going to go from the Monday Night Live to where we are now. So thank you for being here this morning. So what if I've got my notes here so I can look at those, but I'm also looking for your comments. Thank you, Epic. So I'm looking at your comments too. So this is why I have to have glasses. I don't wear glasses like Pam saw me this morning on my live on Facebook doing my walk. I don't have to have glasses to walk or to drive. Sometimes I put them on to drive now. I want to get that LASIK surgery. We got to get monetized, don't we, Pam? Because I need to get LASIK surgery. But I don't do this to get monetized. It's just part of it. When I get monetized, I can get some LASIK surgery. So y'all share this if you feel like it's going to be helpful. So anyway, then all I have to do is wear sunglasses. So we talked on Monday night about the afterlife. So if you came in late, I'll catch you up. Right, Luna? So we talked about the afterlife, and it went all over the place. We covered a lot on Monday night, but what we started with was, the grief there. The loss of someone was what started that. Yes, thank you, Epic. Yes, to read, I definitely need them. I miss being able to read without the glasses, but yeah. Thank you, Viola. I appreciate that. So Viola, the topic this morning is what if. Mr. Samenveer, it's good to see you this morning. I'm so grateful all of y'all made it this morning, and so we're going to talk about, cover a lot of bases today with what if, because what if, how many times a day do we say what if, and when I first started therapy in 2002, I would be asking, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? And I just said earlier, what if are most of our what ifs hopeful? Most of them are not. So I'm going to share my journey with you and see if this helps you some. So the loss of someone has us wondering about the afterlife. And meanwhile, how do we cope with grief here? Because y'all know, as a mindset coach, a life coach, my specialty is addiction recovery, codependency, and grief. So my specialty in addiction recovery. Thank you very much. I was wondering how they looked, so I appreciate that. These are supposed to be the non-glare glasses that you all suggested. See, I do listen to y'all. So y'all were telling me, Stacy, you need some non-glare glasses. So I ordered the non-glare glasses. All right. So addiction recovery, codependency, and grief. I've worked on myself for over 29 years. 29 years. It's at 29 years ago I got sober, but before that, the pain I had to get to, the pain to, for the pain to get great enough for me to work on that was what I call the school of hard knocks, right? So then I had the school of hard knocks before that. So we also talked about Monday about what do we want? See, a lot of times we defeat ourselves when we're thinking about what do I want? Well, what if this happens? Well, what if that happens? Because part of what drives our ego as human beings, not just me, not just you, but as human beings, part of what drives our ego is worrying about not getting what we want or losing what we have. So most of the time, that's what gives us our drive. So we're trying to strategize those what ifs from fear. So we also talked about, we discussed what we do not want and give a lot of energy to. So most of the time, those what ifs are what we don't want and give our energy to. What if the things that we don't want are part of the healing process, though? They're just part of the healing process, the catalyst for our growth. So we did talk about healing, and so to further extend the thoughts and perspectives of this thought, that will be our topic today. So we talked about how instant gratification plays a part in the distraction of what we don't want sometimes. We just did not learn how to go for what we do want. So a lot of times we escape when we decide I want something, and then we start catastrophizing, fear that we're not going to get it, start making things up about why we're not going to get it, because sometimes it's hard. So, hello, good morning, Rodolfo. How are you this day? So we're expanding on what we were talking about Monday night on the what ifs. So if anybody missed part of that, I've kind of updated it, but I'm going to summarize this in order. But I'm just kind of introducing while everyone's getting on here this morning where and what this topic come from. So we talked about recognizing good feelings and bad feelings linked to habits. In recovery, we call it playing the tape through, learning to play the tape through. Because instant gratification is a knee-jerk reaction. What if the result of anxiety? I choose not to be anxious because I don't fear the future. That's good. That's good. Do you do breathing exercises, IRAP 21? Because that's, I suggest a lot, is the breathing exercises. At the end of all these labs, we do a breathing exercise so we can get regulated. And it even regenerates your cells. And so, yes, it does help, doesn't it? So that's why we do that. But a lot of us are just, when we feel like we're going, and a lot of people are just going. I got to get here. I got to get there. I got to do this. I got to do that. And we can only do what we can do. So it's understanding, too, our intentions and motivations. So getting what we want, is it really, you do the square breathing? That's very good. Yeah, I keep it simple here. So we just do the deep breath into the tummy, which it could be. I don't have everybody count, but it could be the counting because, the counting, but we only count the 4 counts of holding the breath when we hold the breath. And then we release gently and slowly with the out breath through the mouth. So yeah, thank you for sharing that because it strengthens and confirms that this stuff works. It does keep the anxiety away, doesn't it? That helps me with anxiety too is, I tell people, I suggest to people to breathe, pray, and say, I don't know. Because we can catastrophize. Catastrophizing is making up stuff, those what ifs. And so when we talked about recognizing the good feelings and the bad feelings and those knee-jerk reactions that go with them, playing that tape through, those knee-jerk reactions are linked to self-sabotage. Sorry to distracted. You sat with someone scared to fly on the plane and taught him breathing exercises. He really appreciated. Oh, that is so good, Viola. I use breathing exercises on the plane too. I went to Spain last year, and coming back, I was sick when I went to Spain, and coming back, I was still congested. I wasn't sick, but I was still congested. And you know how when you're in the plane and you're congested and it hurts your ears. And I was sitting there thinking, oh my gosh. Yes, exactly, IRAP. It does help. I talk about the parasympathetic response nervous system or the central nervous system and the autonomic nervous system, because then that reactions come from the autonomic nervous system, right? Sounds like you're speaking the same language here. Yeah, so when my ears started hurting, I started breathing because I was thinking, oh my gosh, I can't stand this pain in my ear. And then I started breathing and it's like, it was okay. So thank you for sharing that with that person. It is helpful. It is. And so if we made a knee-jerk reaction to self-sabotage, we can pause and play the tape through of what we can control and what we can't control and what we want to feel, and not run from what we are feeling. So I talked to Monday about what we're running from and what we're running to. Are we running to self-sabotage or what we want? Luke, it's so good to see you. I was thinking about you. Yes, the vagus nerve. Exactly. And retraining those neural pathways, right? IRAP. Luke, it's so good to see you. We were talking about you. I was talking about my moderators the other day. Pam's here too, but I thank you. Thanks for being here. So, we don't want to run. We have to learn not to run from the bad feelings, but like IRAP is saying, to breathe through them, and to learn to understand them and have a relationship with ourselves, because we lose ourselves when we start self-sabotaging and grabbing for things. It has been a minute, grabbing for things outside of ourselves. Thank you, IRAP. So when we can breathe, we can process it. We didn't learn how to process it a lot of times. So sometimes when people relapse, because I do work with addiction recovery, bad feelings and insecurities, before I get to that, bad feelings and insecurities don't just go away because we realize we have them. We can't just say, oh, I realize this is a bad feeling and insecurity, and it's just going to go away because what I want to feel is good feelings and security. It's a process. And this is where a lot of people may feel like a failure too, because you can't just say, oh, I see that, and then try to run. Because I tried to do that too. I get it. I used to read all these books and I would say, okay, I got it. Then I would get out there and start peopling with people. And then it'd be like, oh, I don't have it. I don't have it at all. Yeah, Luke, I'm not gone. Just doing social media. Yeah, sometimes it's good. I do detox like on Sundays. People don't hardly see me. I am not from Argentina. Thank you, I did. So on Sundays, people don't see me on here. On the weekends, I'm not on the internet as much, on Saturday and Sunday. And it's just like you said, Luke, it's that detox, because sometimes I need to sit with, on here, that's why I appreciate so much y'all being here, because you could be in somewhere where people are catastrophizing, because there's a lot of stuff on here that's gloom and doom. And sometimes I watch that stuff, but I have to monitor, when we're paying attention to what we put into our mind, body, and soul. I have to monitor this stuff. Epic, 2 days without dudes hitting on you. These dudes. I don't mind the dudes on here so much, as long as they're not being naughty. But it's like, even on Facebook, people will see that are in the town that I live in. And so, so somebody asked me to coffee, or somebody wanted to meet with me last week, 23 years younger than with me. And I'm like, you are way too young to be meeting with me. And he's like, I like to talk to older women. So I was like, okay, well, I'll talk to you. I'll meet you for coffee. He didn't make it Thursday or Friday. We were like, okay, we could do it Thursday or Friday. I didn't hear from him. Then today he's like, I'm going to be over there all day long. And it's like, oh no. you miss the bus. You miss the bus. If I'm willing to give you a few, if I'm willing to give some of my time up and you can't make it, then that's just too bad. Well, this isn't my dating site. So if you're new here, I hope you will subscribe to this channel. What we talk about here is we talk about spirituality, but we don't talk about religion. I'm talking about belief systems today, but we don't talk about religion. Yeah, you win some, you lose some. If they don't make it, if they get a chance and they blow it, that's it. That's it. Because I am busy. Dating is not my priorities. And, in the life outside of here and the life in here, it's not my priorities. I do want to date someday, but showing up is a big thing. So, thank you all for being here. So, we don't talk about religion. We don't talk about my age. We don't talk about politics. And we don't talk about my dating so much. But I just talked about dating. So, you can subscribe to my channel, Adib. You can be friends with me on here if you want, but yeah. So bad feelings and insecurities, like I said, they don't just go away because we decide, we see that we have them. You need to diagnose how they got there. We have to diagnose how they got there. Right, IRAP? We need to diagnose how did they get there so we can know how to immune ourselves from relapse, whether it's food, whether it's drugs, alcohol, shopping, chaos, love. There's all kinds of addictions. And, there's a lot of people out there that got them and don't even know, just like me. I didn't know until I did. Codependency even is an addiction to people pleasing and things like this, getting that approval. So sometimes when people relapse, it is due to death. When talking to Luna, we were talking about death last week, and I know I shared that I lost my son, and when I lost my son, people came out. I had 13 years sober already, but people were making sure that I didn't relapse because that was one of the things that was what they call a reservation. If if you know about recovery, then a reservation. Thank you very much, Adib. Your reservation is, what might make you want to self-sabotage again? Because my addictions are self-sabotaging. So what might make me want to self-sabotage again was certainly the loss of a child or my child being hurt, and both happened in one night, so my friends in recovery came out of the woodwork. So support is very important, not isolating and being alone, So a lot of times people want to put on this smiley face out in public, and I did stay in for a while, but people did come to me. I was not isolated. So having support, knowing that we don't have to grow through anything by ourselves. Sometimes, though, we're trying to prove ourselves time and time again, and there can be a relapse, when people don't die from us trying to prove ourselves. And sometimes, we talked about on Monday night, what do we want and how to get there? So sometimes when you build your life, when your whole life is coming together, like I said, whether it's food, if you lose weight and you're getting to ride the airplane, you're getting to go in places and ride things and do things that you never got to do before, it doesn't mean you can return to eating a bag of chips and unhealthy food. It doesn't mean that you've got somewhere, that you have arrived getting there, And sometimes with alcohol or drugs, people will get to feeling better and think, okay, I could do one more, And what I learned is I didn't have one more in me, So it's sometimes, and they say one is too many and 1,000's never enough. So eating one chip, if chip is a weakness for you, that could be too many, because is it going to send you down? Most people can't just eat one. Food addiction is one of the hardest. And I think then pharmaceutical addiction is the second hardest, because I know those two, when I've worked with people, those are the hardest for people to work with. Day is never over. Master got me working. Someday Master set me free. Ah, very interesting. Yes, Epic. Yeah, it's like we can become driven like I don't know what's politically correct anymore to say, but what's driving us? What is driving us? So Before we get into our thoughts on the topic today and talking about addiction, codependency, and grief, I'm going to explain this to you because a lot of people don't understand the relationship. The environment around you is as important as your headspace. Yes, they've shown that people sitting next to high performers in class perform higher themselves. Yes, and they say that we're the sum of the 5 people in our life. Now, I've really probably about 4 people that are really close to me, but there could be 5. I mean, I have a lot of people that I know and that I love, but those closest to me. And so, yes, that's what they say. It's the sum of those people. It's like, I have my one best friend that calls me every morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. And then I've got my other bestie. She's a world traveler, but she shows me where I want to grow, because she gets to do and she's seen a lot of things and she shares with me. So it's like, who are we around? Or are we around people who are complaining and finding the problems all the time? So on this channel, what I try to do is to help us to find solutions. Because sometimes we don't know why we're thinking the way that we're thinking. And sometimes we're just running in default mode. If you're like me, I used to run on this default mode where I didn't know I was anticipating and strategizing because I was just trying to make it, y'all, right? So many people just trying to make it. But you get to have an adventure when you can surround yourself with people who make you be better. Yes, exactly. And I had to learn to do that. I had to learn in recovery that if I wanted what somebody has got, then I have to do what they did. I can't just wish it, sit there and wish and think. And that's also where it comes up with making stuff up and using our imaginations in a way that's not effective, because we might have grown up in a negative background, where they said, well, they have this because they did this, or they have that because they did this, and not, putting down other people's achievements. Because some people are jealous of other people's achievements. Some people may be jealous of your achievements. And that's why a lot of us play small, is we know that we have a higher purpose, but we play small. And then we take it personal, but we get to change our mind. And this was one thing that I had to learn in therapy and coaching too, is that I can change my mind. Thank goodness we can change our mind. I wrap. Yes, it's most important to place yourself in a group of like-minded people that enhance you. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, when we're going into this talk about understanding, is sometimes we may have been that negative person. So that's where we can have compassion. Is I used to be negative. I just used to find all the problems. And I had to learn to find the solutions. And that's empowering, is when we find the solutions and quit looking at the problems and making up a problem for every solution. And I've worked with people who I'll suggest something and they're like, oh, no, I've tried this. This is not going to work. Or no, they're not going to do this. It's like, no, but what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Because, of course, they're going to do what they're going to do. What are you going to do? So, as we're getting into our thoughts on the topic today, I want to, acknowledge that Dr. Drew and Melody Beattie, I watched a video with them. Dr. Drew has dealt with many addicts, and Melody Beattie coined, really brought attention to codependency. And so what they say is, when we're talking about our survival skills, and so they say addiction is like our coping, right? Addiction is how we cope on the outer world, and how we deal with the outer world is through addiction, like taking the edge off and whatever it is, trying to fit in, trying to feel good enough, all of these things. And then codependency is how are we doing that? The addiction itself is the habit. But the codependency is the people pleasing, the not feeling comfortable in our own skin, the seeking outside of ourselves for approval, for love, for these things that you already can give yourself, but you just didn't learn how yet. So many of us were trained to be codependent through either family, religion, media, even songs. I can't live if living is without you. That's a beautiful song. I love that song. I used to sing it at the top of my lungs, but that's not true. In grief, we have to understand I can live and I have to live if living is without you. Thankfully, before I lost my son, I had worked on my codependency so that I was able to honor him instead of martyr. Because I had to understand what's my business, my source's business, I call God, and somebody else's business. That I'm not in control of everything. you know. So we've talked about control. And really, with all of those, it comes down to us what? Trying to control something. Me and my life partner is not working. She is cheating on me. Well, we'll probably get to that in a minute, okay? Thank you, Adib. I feel for you. That sucks. And, you know, I'm going to talk about that too here. So many of our survival skills were due to fear, our grief of losing someone living or not living, right, Adib? Which connects us to our grief. Some express a fear of dying, as we're going to discuss living, but acknowledge that part of living is dying. Because some people are afraid of it, right? I learned that there was unfaithfulness. See, we're right on target. Everything's falling into plan with the notes, Adib. Unfaithfulness or a break in relationship of sorts, that the relationship as we know it, Adib, dies because they're not who you thought they were, because you probably didn't say, I want to get in a relationship with someone who's cheating on me, right? I know I've been cheated on too. It doesn't feel good. And what I've learned is once they do, they'll do it again. That's for me. Unless you go to therapy. I do believe that if you go to therapy and get an outside, you know, a third party to help you navigate the healing process, because you have to get a new relationship. She's a Pakistan girl. Okay. So are y'all having a long distance relationship? The thing is that relationship, if you didn't sign up to get in a relationship with somebody who was going to be unfaithful to you, then that part of that relationship has died, and you have to start a new relationship through therapy, or you're going to keep having the same relationship. So you can accept the death of that relationship now, or you can accept the death of the relationship later. Yeah, epic. That's in some places it could be. Yeah. I'm thankful that's not me. I'm thankful I didn't have to grow up with that. No. So, no, we both stay and live in England, London, so y'all are safe. But the thing is unless y'all go to therapy, ID, are you going to be able to trust her again? Or him? I don't know which it is. But are you going to be able to trust them again? You know, because a lot of times when we've been cheated on, we'll be looking to make sure they're being faithful. Most of us don't just restore our trust that easily. And when we do, we usually get cheated on again. That's my experience. So a lot of this I talk about from my experience. Okay, so it will never return to the trust and faith that had been there prior if, you know, you both don't go to therapy. One of you can go to therapy, and that might help some. You get to decide, do I want to be in a relationship? Ask yourself, do I want to be in a relationship with somebody who could be unfaithful? Sometimes people are okay. You're right. Any relationship always contains the possibility of being unfaithful, of betrayal. And so the thing is to be okay with yourself, to be okay with yourself, and to learn to trust yourself. And I know that sometimes, I don't know, but that could shake you, you know, if someone's unfaithful. Working together could bring you together again. But there is that possibility, like Irap said, and certainly feeling comfortable in your own skin from within is going to be very helpful, to have your own confidence and to know that it wasn't about you. So it's about how much does faithfulness matter to you. I think when we're younger, faithfulness matters a whole lot than when we get older. You know, I don't know, because it depends on, you know, certain people's psyches, and any relationship also contains the possibility of success. People cheat when it's not doing it for them. Yeah. Live, learn, and do better. Exactly. So, you know, are they supportive? Are they there for you? Is this cheating taking them away from you? You know, that's where I would have a problem, is if it's taken away from my relationship with you, because we can't control it. It's nothing that you can control. Flying Brian, top of the morning to you, Flying Brian. We're talking about what ifs today. We are exploring. We are. Welcome. I'm glad that you're here. So when asking, you know, we talked about Monday night, what do we want? We looked at instant gratification. Adib, she is a diehard Bollywood movie fan. She is a Sakura Khan fan, and I'm a Salman Khan fan. She left me for her cousin. Oh, okay. Well, I really don't know what to say to that. But hang in here. Hopefully something I say today will help you. Yeah, that's a lot, isn't it? So when asking what do we want, we looked at instant gratification. Instant gratification comes with addiction. A lot of addiction is a reaction to fear in the central nervous system that we talked about, with our wrap. Fear in the central nervous system that we don't know how to cope with. So this definitely works with our wants that we don't want anymore, and the navigation of these fears, which in part may be not enough or too much. A lot of people fear not being enough or fear being too much. Boy, Grinch is carrying on, isn't he? Beep, beep. So you're going to return? Okay. So a lot of addiction is, okay, this definitely works with these fears in part that we may not be enough or be too much. So when we fear these things and make up a familiar dialogue, it may start with, what if? What if they leave me? What if I don't get this job? What if this happens? What if I, what? I know, right? Grinchy. It's just sitting back there carrying on, just chatting up a storm. So I know for me, when I first began therapy in 2002, I had a lot of catastrophizing, what ifs running my central nervous system. And I thought that was reality. And with that knee-jerk reactions y'all heard me talking about Monday night, I was running. When I got scared, I would run. I didn't know why I was getting scared a lot of times. I mean, I did know, because in my mind I did know, but I didn't know how it linked to the past of my running. So I had to start dissecting and learning that. I know, right? Who was it that told me that they were having troubles with food the other night? I encourage you that if you're having troubles, with the support and with the encouragement and what to do and some of the things that you could have that would give you protein and things like this, Pam Monjero Journey with Pam is a good follow, because she has these exercises that are not stressful, that aren't going to hurt you. She does her daily 50, and she also, it's very exploratory. She takes you on field trips, really cool trips. So I encourage you to follow Pam if you don't, to subscribe to her. So the knee-jerk reactions for me was from what I didn't want. You're very welcome, darling. From what I didn't want. And I was running. And so I know that I spoke of what we're running from and running to. And I don't know about you, but for me, for a long time, it was the extremes that still had me dissatisfied. I would run this way and I wouldn't be happy. And I would run that way and I wouldn't be happy. So I had to learn to get in harmony with myself. Harmony, and to honor. And when I honored myself, I could honor someone else. So my therapist told me, why don't I imagine good things? And I've told y'all, I told her that I didn't have an imagination. But the reality was, with those what ifs were my imagination, but I thought that they were real. They say, and the acronym in recovery for fear is false evidence appearing real. So that's what it is. And some say F everything and run. That's the other acronym for it. So anyway, the reality is those what ifs were my imagination. And I had to retrain my neural pathways, neuroplasticity, to gather evidence from another imagination. Because when we look at the evidence is from the past. The evidence isn't something that we're gathering right now, usually. Epic. Positive proof doesn't mean what you're proving is true. Absolutely. Because it's about what's in our mind. It's our perspective, and our perspective was gathered from our eyes, nose, ears, mouth, and all these senses that we have. Just like that's how we navigate through life. Just like our animal friends. We're mammals, and our friends, the dogs can hear better than we can. They can smell better than we can. That's their perceptions that help them survive. Our perceptions help us survive too. But when we've experienced trauma, or we've experienced, negative childhoods or negative relationships, sometimes we're trying to navigate from those things. So one of the things that helped me was that when I was in recovery was I got The Secret, right? The Secret was a big deal, a lot of years ago. And so The Secret said to imagine manifesting a cup of coffee. So it was telling me to imagine a different way. like my therapist was telling me to imagine a different way to turn my what ifs into something else. So I did imagine a cup of coffee. And then, I imagined receiving a cup of coffee. Then, like a few days later, I was going to a meeting and somebody come up with this Starbucks coffee. And I was like, oh, dang. And they're like, here, Stacy, I got an extra coffee. And it's like, ah. And so when we do this, like when we talked about, a few weeks ago or a week ago, when you buy a car and, you're like, I want this car. And then you start seeing that car everywhere. See, that's part of how we can train these neural pathways to what we do want rather than trying to strategize what we don't want, giving more energy. So it's about the energy. So we're going to keep talking about that. So, it was enough evidence what I gave my attention to grew. That's what it did. So I love serendipity and synchronicity. Anybody here loves serendipity and synchronicity? I love those things. It's like magic to me. And so it was coined, really when I got manifested that coffee, it was more of a synchronicity because it was something that I thought about. And it's like Carl Jung, said that this phenomenon bridges the gap between your internal world, like an emotion, a dream, or a stray thought, with an external event, like running into exactly the person you were thinking about. Sometimes we think about somebody, like I was thinking about Luke a few days ago. Somebody was asking me about my moderators, and I said I have 2 men moderators and I have 3 lady moderators. And of course, Luke is one of my moderators. So, I thought about Luke. So here's Luke today. So see, it's kind of magical, isn't it? So here's the deal, is those what ifs that are expectations of things going wrong, those are not magical, and they're linked to catastrophizing. So one of the effects that you want by fear and the other by faith, right? So magic comes with faith, but the other comes with fear. So healing, so this is like also talking about the good feelings and the bad feelings. You want a Lamborghini epic? I probably in my other days would have. My favorite car, first off, I shared with, Pam saw this morning, I don't know if she's still here, but that I don't even have a car now. I live in Mexico for the most part, and we have public transportation. You can get a taxi. There's taxis all over the place, and collectivos, and that's like this van that hauls people to Playa del Carmen or to Cancun from the town that I'm in. But so I don't like as much responsibility today. Do you want to insure that Lamborghini? Because when we play that tape through, it's like, and I know you're kidding, but yeah, that's part of that playing that tape through. I shared the other night, I thought I wanted to live in Granbury, Texas with, and have 10 acres. And I realized, well, to have the land, you need to have ag use so your taxes aren't so high. Then I had these 3 cows, and then I had to get the cows to come back home. Oh, no worries, darling. No worries. I know you're listening. Thank you. So then, so it's like when we play the tape through, and sometimes it's okay to want. Oh, okay. Thank you, IREP. Did you subscribe to this channel? Because I really appreciated your input too. And I hope that you'll be here again. I come on here again on Friday night. It's 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. So thank you for joining today. I sure appreciate you, and I hope that you subscribed. She. Okay. Well, I hope that you subscribed, and I'll be back on here Friday night, okay? All right. Thank you so much. You have a great day, a wonderful Wednesday. I want you to think about what you're winning today. It sounds like you already know how to do that, but did you know that Wednesday came from the Celtic god Odin? The name, that's why we have Wednesday? That's what it is, y'all, if you didn't know. It means wonderment. All right, very cool. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I did appreciate your input too. All right, thank you. So getting back to the notes, healing, like we talked about Monday night, is what stops catastrophizing. And that means talking about our fears. A lot of people are hiding their fears because they're afraid to look weak. They're afraid to look a certain way to other people. We learned I can't save my face and my behind at the same time. So some of which may be getting in trouble with another adult. Some people are afraid of getting in trouble with another adult, like we talked about. So when we talked about what you may not want any longer, and that you had wanted at one time. Grinchy. I know, I know. So a lot of us end up in, we clearly manifested that, is what I'm trying to say. Sorry, Grinch distracted me. So a lot of us have what we wanted in the past. And it's okay to change our mind, but it's also understanding that this was a catalyst, that it was all good, that it's not bad because we don't want that anymore. But if it's a person, there may be a problem there, you know. So talking about that we have appreciation still. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is to have appreciation. So what we were clear when we wanted to, were we clear when we manifested that, or were we running off that central nervous system? Thumbnails with my regular session to help send out the algorithm. Thank you so much, Pam, because you were so good at this. I appreciate any and all suggestions. I just love your videos and stuff, so thank you for that. And that's a good suggestion. I appreciate it. So a lot of us end up in relationships that we don't want, that we hope will save us. Thank you very much, Epic. I did do one today for this one, but I'll take Pam's suggestion so that everyone can see when I'm on here. So thank you, Epic. Yes. So I don't think I had my makeup on in that one either, so thank you. Flying Brian. I know Pam is an inspiration. Yeah. So a lot of us end up in relationships that where we wanted someone to save us. Again, that's the media. We grow up at an early age. I saw fairy tales at an early age, and so I believed in those fairy tales. I believe in magic, but the fairy tales, I had to learn I get to write my own story, because I got in a lot of trouble thinking that the villains in my stories, or so-called villains, were going to be heroes. They weren't really villains. They were catalysts for my growth. But I had to learn to process that. At first, they were a villain, and I had to learn, oh no, Stacy, you were a part of this relationship too. So love, we wanted someone to save us, someone to love us, and someone to give us something and pay in some way. Maybe they're transactional without our realization, because we're given also. So a lot of times we're giving so that we can get, but we don't realize that's a transactional relationship, that we lose ourselves sometimes giving. And that's what I used to do, is lose myself giving in a relationship, because I was trying to get something that I had inside of me from outside of me, that love, that saving. These things had to come from inside of me. So, I ended up with settling, because I was going into instant gratification, living on that fairy tale, thinking that this person was something that they maybe had even told me clearly that they were not, but trying to save them so they could save me. Anybody else done that? That's a sign of codependency. If you're a giver, set your limits, because the takers don't have any. That's true. That's true. And I think that sometimes givers and takers both end up in relationships, and one gets to play a part for a while and the other gets to play a part for a while. But when they don't know what their intentions and motivations are, that's when it comes transactional, right? That's why a lot of people have these transactional relationships, is because they don't know what their intentions and motivations are. They're just, when their central nervous system is running the show, we don't know what our intentions and motivations are. I had to learn what my intentions and motivations are. And so when I'm looking at a relationship, I have to say, well, do they show up? Well, I'm a person who shows up, so this doesn't match my energy. I'm not judging them, but they just don't match my energy if they don't show up. So I may invite them to something, but I'm not counting on them being there. And I certainly set a boundary as, this is what time I'm going to do this. So, if you're there, you're there. I'm not trying to be a hard ass, but there's some people that they just can't do it, and it's okay. But if I want to be on time to something, I don't want to ask that person to do that. But if it's something where it's laid back and I don't have a time element, then that's fine. We're all both, Brian. If you think you're a giver, you just don't know that you're taking. We all have the capacity for sure to be both. We do. And that's where we come into harmony, because some days we have to say, I talk about, can I afford it? Can I afford it mentally? Can I afford it emotionally? Can I afford it spiritually? Can I afford it physically? Can I afford it financially? When somebody asks me to do something, I need to be able to navigate through those channels. And I learned that from a spiritual coach. That wasn't me coming up with that, but a spiritual coach said to ask yourself, can you afford it mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially? And if one of those says no, well, then you can't. So we talked about autonomy the other night, and we have turned out to adult quicker, and that it may be that if we adulted quicker, like some people started being an adult at a very early age. Some of us had parents that were, going crazy, and we had to learn how to manage at an early age. Some people I know, had parents die at an early age, and they took on that responsibilities. So sometimes these things happen, these tragic things happen. They're not your identity of who you are, but we need to observe what we did if it's not bringing us happiness now. So adulting is hard, and just because we're adults doesn't mean that we are no longer learning and teachable. That is where humility and alignment come in. Arrogance is when we make a case against it, what we once wanted, and we might have fought for it one time. We might have fought for what we once wanted at one time, and then we don't want it, but then if somebody else wants it, then we want it back. This is immaturity, emotional immaturity. So learning to navigate, and surprisingly, there are adults, I see them on YouTube all the time on usually law and crime, but there's adults who do this, right? There's adults who do this. So learning to navigate with the uncertainty of a dream instead of certainty of disaster and the magic of trust in a higher power is just more relaxing than control. Some of that control is over things that we are powerless over, driven by fear. Which would you rather have running your life? Fear or, the curiosity? So there was a book written by the author named Mindy Audlin, Audlin, if you want to get it or read it. And I didn't read it. I'll be totally transparent, as I didn't read that book, but it's called What If Up. That was another thing. So it's about what do we feed ourselves. I do feed myself some law and crime sometimes, but I also try to feed myself positive things, especially the last hours before bedtime, because I don't want to go to sleep with this pondering these crazy thoughts in my head. I want to make sure that it aligns with me, because before we go to sleep, we need to be thinking about what do I want, because that's the rest and regeneration for the creativity for the next day. So it was, her talk and the presentation of it, I did see, and it was called What If Up, meaning to change our thoughts instead of dreaming and navigating toward our dreams and wants rather than strategizing away from our dreams and wants. Thank you, Flying Brian. Thank you. Yeah. So I share what I get to learn with y'all too. So thank you. I'm glad that it's helpful, because I'm still learning. I love getting to learn now. I was afraid to learn at one time, but I love getting to learn now, and I love getting to share it. So our minds are powerful and best when in our own business, our own intentions and motivations, rather than trying to figure out what somebody else wants. What do I want? What do I want? Oh yeah, before sleeping. Yes. Yes, because if I watch something thrown off, my friend loves to try to get me addicted to series. One of my best friends, and she loves series on Netflix and everything. So she'll and I'm not saying opposed against series, but I don't have those series on before I go to bed, because typically they're holder on. They'll keep you going to the next one and the next one. They can be highly addictive, and so if I get to watching something like Yellowstone or Ozarks or something like this before bedtime, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to try to figure this stuff out, because that's the way my brain goes, is I'm always trying to figure things out. It's not that I'm trying to strategize. I just want to know what's going to happen next in that addiction, right? Because I can get addicted and be trying to figure it out. So it feeds that addiction, those series do. And I have to be careful about those series. Sweet, sweet. So our minds are powerful and best when in our business rather than distracting and mounting evidence of why life is challenging, buying, eating, drinking, smoking, chasing as a result of a nervous system that doesn't know what to do. So the brain and the gut are connected, and this is programming. And it's what people are scared. When people are scared or in fear, that's why some people start rationalizing and justifying living in instant gratification, the fear that things aren't going to last. Does that make sense? So some people rationalize and justify. I've been looking for some new series to watch. Yeah, I just watched the Dutton Ranch, or yeah, I guess that's what it is. I'm waiting on the next series. So, but I watched it early in the day so I don't get thrown off. But yeah. So rationalizing and justifying instead of living in instant gratification. I'll say that again. So the brain and the gut are connected. I know Pam was in my course about the unbound self where we talked about the brain. There's a gut brain and it communicates all the time through that vagus nerve that was talked about earlier. You know, the gut brain communicates with this brain. And so sometimes when something happens that we don't like, we say, oh, I'm sick at my stomach. Well, your gut brain, you know, is responding to the way that you're processing this, because we release chemicals. We release hormones. We release things when we're thinking things and feeling things. There's a release of chemicals, hormones in our body and sensors and stuff. That's so sweet. See, it's Wednesday. You're already winning. You just walked in the door and you're winning. So, you know, understanding that you've been watching Dutton Ranch too. Watched one episode last night. I watched the whole series. I'm waiting on the next series. So my friend has Jellyfin, so I get to watch stuff on Jellyfin. It's on my TV. So anyway, I won't tell you what's happening. So rationalizing it, here's the thing about rationalizing and justifying. Sometimes when people get in fear, they start rationalizing and justifying why instant gratification is real. I'll just do this, I'll just do that. And it's, you know, I need this, I need that. And it's like I'm rationalizing, justifying, you know, and then the next thing we know, the fear is that things aren't going to last. Also, that's another fear, is that it's not going to last. So we may buy something. That's compulsive shopping. See, obsession and compulsion. Does this work with suppressing hunger? It can help us to learn to play the tape through, because that's kind of what we're talking about today, PH 14, is that when people are not playing the tape through. We looked at, thank you, Omar Lopez. So we looked at the other day about, you know, Monday we talked about what do I want, what do we want, and how do we get there? Like there's a destination, and life is an adventure. You're going to get there. But then when you get there, it's going to be cool for a while, and you may enjoy it there for a while, but life is unlimited. See, and when we learn to live without those limits with the instant gratification, because instant gratification will limit us because it's self-sabotaging. It's not for our highest and best good. Hello, Cool Whip. So if we're going for instant gratification all the time, our central nervous system is running amok, then we're like, not, thank you so much for those hearts. You don't feel hungry? Omar. Hello, Omar. Well, you know, I'm a coach. I help people with food, eating, you know, disorders and things like this. So you're welcome to look and email me if you're interested in getting help for that. But anyway, I'm going to go on with the notes because we still got quite a ways to go. Thank you, Pammy. Thank you for all those hearts. So when we change our own algorithm and quit giving power to the fears, then we can live more comfortably in uncertainty. Life is uncertain. It just is. Hey, Rodolfo. Thank you, Flying Brian, for encouraging people to subscribe. Good morning, Five Elements. Bobby, it's good to see you. Thank you all so much. And thank you, Flying Brian. Yes, please do subscribe if you like this content. I certainly appreciate you feeding this algorithm, because as much as we like the Duttons, it's not going to change our life. It's something to entertain us. This is entertaining, I hope, to a degree, but I also hope that it helps you to feel a part of something. Because I know that I didn't feel a part of something at one time in my life because I didn't know my own intentions and motivations. So I hope that this encourages you to get to know your intentions and motivations. So life is full of uncertainty. You can't predict anything, like IRAP was saying earlier. You can't predict if a person's going to be faithful or unfaithful. You can't predict if a person's going to do this or this. But what you can do is be comfortable in your own skin from within. And then say, what do I want? Because that's what we're talking about, right? What do we want and how do we get there? And realizing that we're going to get there and then we're going to want to get somewhere else, because this gives us confidence, not that we get dissatisfaction, but because we get confidence, like me getting to Mexico from, Texas to Mexico. And then now I've gotten to Mexico, it's like, oh, now I want to go to Spain and I want to go to Italy and I'm going to visit Greece and I'm going to do all of these things, because we've talked about grief too. So we're getting back to this stuff. Everything circles back around. When I wrote this out yesterday, and then I summarize it and put it in order. Epic. Well, that sounds how you know what people will do. Watch what they chase. Yes. Yes. And listen to what they say. People will tell you who they are or what they want. We need to listen. But sometimes we're not listening. We're fantasizing. I talked about Monday night about how the biggest addiction number one is fantasy. I am going to come to Spain, Viola. I'm coming to, you would visit me every 5 months and get therapy. Awesome. Because I'm going to be in Valencia, Spain is where I'm going. That's where I'm going. Flying Brian, make as many friends as you can, because you never know when you'll need one. Right? Right? I'm thankful. I have a lot of friends. Yeah. Okay, I will. Where are you? Where are you going in Spain? So acceptance and humility come with relaxing and not with control. Okay? You can't control and get acceptance and humility. So when we acknowledge the fears, we can heal them instead of living in insanity. Her weight loss journey is awesome. So insanity of the same thing and the same results. A limited, sometimes self-destructive life is driven by fear, or the other extreme, playing it safe so that you're in fear of living. Okay? So sometimes we're afraid of living because we're afraid of what's going to happen. But when we can get comfortable. Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Yes, it is beautiful in Spain. Valencia. I was walking the streets last year in April, and the oranges, I was like, we've heard of Valencia oranges, but when I was walking the street, I was like, oh my gosh, there are actually oranges on this street. So it was cool. They weren't just in the plantations, or what have you. So, and that was unlimited. When I got to Valencia, though, I knew I was supposed to be there. I'd never been there before in my life, but I knew I was supposed to be there. So I plan on living in Valencia for a couple of years and then moving to Italy. I plan on retiring in Italy. But I haven't been to Italy yet, so I might change my mind, because I could do that. Thank you so much, Viola. I appreciate that. Yes, Blind Brian, it is beautiful. And so when we acknowledge the fears, we can heal them instead of living in the insanity of the same day, same thing, different, same results. And a limited, sometimes self-destructive life driven by fear, or the other extreme, playing it so safe that you're in fear of living. Because there are some people in fear of living, right? So we also talked about death and the fear of that and the afterlife. And it is interesting, of all the perspectives that we have about the afterlife, we all have our own relationship with Source or not. My personal belief system is that we all have a soul connected to Source, and that while our bodies give out, our soul continues. Our bodies will stop. Our bodies will get older. Our bodies will not be the same the whole life. But our soul is here, and our soul is learning. It's taking in the data, the information. It's learning. How do I want to navigate? So I do believe in different life incarnations. Good morning, Dead Mike. How are you? Omar, yes, I do have a bird. I have the Grinch back there, but he's not making an appearance yet. Oh, yes, he is. He's hanging out on his cage. So while our bodies give out, our soul continues. And I believe in different incarnations. And then maybe when our soul is through, we get to be a star. When I get up and look at those stars in the morning, I just imagine, and when they say our loved ones are with us and stuff, I think of my loved one as a star, And so maybe that is our loved ones that pass on. I consider them to be stars sometimes. So there's something magical and loving about looking at stars and their character, and they are characterized. Anyway, back to what if. What if we can't wait to meet with those loved ones again when we get to the other side? We always say, I'm going to see you again on the other side. Tried but tired. Tried, tired but coffee helped. Good, good. I'm glad you got some coffee. Coffee does help. I believe there's a change of worlds after death. I know, and I we've talked about before on here that, one of the most pivotal movies that I watched was What Dreams May Come, because it talked about the perceptions about what we think death is in the afterlife. Like the wife in that saw the purgatory, but the husband in that saw the art. And so it's about what do we want to see when we pass on. In church, sometimes I grew up in a church that taught you there's going to be streets of gold with crowns and jewels and all of this. And that, it made me think, my imagination with that was that all of us were going to be in our earthly bodies up there on these streets of gold with these crowns. But it didn't make sense to me. So I was asking questions, So anyway, being able to get my own relationship with my source, none of that matters, right? Because I don't care about all of that. But what I care about is my relationship with source and that guidance. So it is what we think that it is I'd like to say that it's whatever. I'm not going to say anybody's wrong with their perceptions, because I do believe that after we die, whatever we think is going to happen, whatever our soul tells us is going to happen, is going to happen. If what dreams may come, I'm sure my son's going to come to me as Elvis Presley, if y'all saw that movie. So anyway, if not, then you'll have to just figure it out. So, oh, that was amazing, Pam. I just loved it. It was great to get to be in awe of Spain and the history and the buildings. I love that. In this world that everything is so disposable, if we're going to have buildings, I love that people use these old buildings, because it makes me sad that people keep just abandoning buildings and putting up more buildings, because that isn't sustainable for our earth. But that's just me. So anyway, back to what if. What if, when we say, okay, where am I at? On the other side or in heaven. So what if it's like that play that I told y'all about Monday night, or in What Dreams May Come, is that our loved ones in our last life are the loved ones in this life? What? What if our loved ones in our last life, if you believe in incarnations, if our loved ones in the last life were our loved ones in this life, and that they are supposed to be catalysts? So on our story time on Sunday, I'm going to read y'all a story that's not one that I create. I'm going to read you a story called A Little Soul in the Sun, so it will help get that perspective more clear to you. I don't know if y'all have heard of it, but it was written by Neil Donald Walsh, the man who wrote the Conversations with God books. And so we're going to look at that on Sunday, about how maybe the people in our last life, we can't even remember the day we were born. So do we know if we have a past life? We don't even know if we have a past life. But if we are willing to entertain that, I know, isn't that a great movie? And that was Incarnation too. So it talked about what we love is going to come see us, like he loved a professor. So the professor came as his son, right? And so, but what our perceptions are, what we believe. So it had to do with our belief systems. Oh, I hope you're able to too. But if you don't, then, if you watch the replay, Flying Brian, that will be good. You can watch the replay. So the bottom line is that we live a life of uncertainty. And for me, it helps to have faith in a power greater than myself. I'm human and I have fears also. But practice actively turning them over when they come up. We're going to have fears. We're human beings. We're going to have fears. None of us are bulletproof. I even have a book about Evie Pompadouris. I have lots of books too that talks about being bulletproof. But it's about how to guide my perceptions and things like this, how to guide our perceptions, to see, being able to read, different things. But for me, it helps to have faith in that power greater than ourselves. I'm human and I have fears also. So I turn them over when they come up, and it helps my central nervous system. So it doesn't mean that I ignore problems. It doesn't mean that. For me, I pray about my problems. I've suggested to y'all to breathe, pray, and say, I don't know. I don't know who or what you're praying for. I'm not telling you who or what to pray to or for or what. That's your business. Your business, your relationship with your source is your business. And so, yeah, it is an excellent movie. So what's our business? And so what you pray for. And I know that I used to be getting in, the reason I say breathe, pray, and say I don't know, and talk about our business, because a lot of the times was the obsessive thinking, trying to ruminate, or obsessive thinking about something that has already happened or something that I'm afraid is going to happen, right? I know I'm not the only one that has done that. So I would have to, when I caught myself doing that, I would have to go to the bathroom, excuse myself, because sometimes I would be at work and it would make me mad that people actually wanted me to work while I'm trying to obsess over something. They were interrupting my obsessing. So I would go to the bathroom and I had to learn to breathe, get my central nervous system calm, because all that obsessing can cause your heart to speed up. It can cause your breath rate to speed up. It can cause your digestive system to have these toxicities that you actually will release things into your stomach that will make it feel uneasy, those acids. And so I would then have to, breathe and then say, please remove this obsession from me. What I'm thinking about, ruminating over, please remove this obsession from me. And then say, I don't know. Because that I don't know stops me from making up. You know what I mean? Making stuff up is saying, I don't know. Because then I am handing it over. Because what has happened for me is that things I talked about earlier, about how things can turn out better than we even thought about, perceived, or thought, dreamed. So it's not ignoring our problems, it's just not obsessing. So I catch myself not knowing all the time. And when I talk about the belief in magic, the faith in the mystery, and the trust in my source, it comforts my fear. So all of that amounts to the process of the creation and being mindful about what I want to create with a belief system, and how to transform through the mystery. Transform through the mystery. A lot of people are afraid of the mystery. See, so this is where a lot of people will self-sabotage, is in the mystery. That fear of the mystery, that uncertainty, that not knowing. We do have a tendency to hold our breath or not breathe properly under stress. Yes. And it's not that we even think about it. That's our autonomic system that will just your autonomic system does that. The autonomic is like the automatic. So it just naturally does this, and yeah. Like when you got to go to the bathroom. I mean, it's just that unconscious. We just get up and go to the bathroom. We don't really think about the process of it or anything. So the same thing when we have a fear, and then it feeds into the central nervous system, parasympathetic, response system will help. What Dreams May Come. How I love that movie. I've never been a huge fan of. What Dreams May Come is an amazing movie, though. It was very insightful. Thank you, Flying Brian. Yeah. So how do we manifest the power of source? Through prayer, too. It's that simple. And so that's why I say breathe, pray, and say, I don't know. Let it go. And you may have to do that a few times. But instead of making stuff up, causes us to what we don't want. We're making stuff up about what we don't want. So let's, what if what we do want, and let go of control and use our energy more wisely, right? So in summary, thank you all for being here this long. I will try to get through this summary quickly, but it has this compartmentalized for us: fear, grief, healing, and learning to imagine something better. That's what this all amounts to. So we began this conversation talking about the grief in the afterlife. And whenever we lose someone, it's natural to wonder, where do they go? But while we ask those questions, we're also left with another one. How do we keep living here? So as someone who has spent more than 29 years in recovery and who coaches people through addiction recovery, codependency, and grief, I've learned that healing isn't about avoiding pain. Hi, Tom Lester. Thank you for those hearts. It's about learning to move through our pain. We're all going to experience pain. We're all going to experience grief, whether they're living or not living, whether it's our past or whether it's our future. We're going to experience grief. So what do we really want? Many of us spend more energy focused on what we don't want than on what we do want. But what if the things we don't want are actually part of a healing process? Instant gratification versus healing we talked about. So addiction isn't simply substances. People can be addicted to love and chaos. It's our nervous system trying to escape fear. Whether we drink, overeat, overwork, people please, shop, chase relationships, or stay constantly busy, we're usually trying to avoid uncomfortable emotions. In recovery, we use the phrase, play the tape through. Instead of reacting impulsively, we pause. We ask, if I continue down this road, where does it end? Grinchy. Healing isn't, I love you too. Healing isn't making uncomfortable feelings disappear. It doesn't. It don't make them disappear. Healing is discovering where they came from so they no longer control us. And we can retrain our central nervous system, the amygdala, what was said earlier, and our neural pathways. So where what if begins. Many of us don't realize that our imagination has been trained by fear. What if I fail? What if they leave? What if I lose everything? What if I'm not enough? For years, I believed those thoughts were reality. And my therapist told me, why don't you imagine good things? So why don't you imagine good things, okay? So fear or faith? Fear and faith both ask us to imagine something that hasn't happened yet. Fear imagines disaster, faith imagines possibility. Neither knows the future. So one simply creates more peace than the other. When we stop trying to control everything instead of trust the process of healing, our nervous system begins to relax. So healing changes what we want. We get more clear about what we want through healing. So many of the things we once wanted came from survival. We wanted someone to rescue us, validate us, complete us, protect us. As we heal, our wants mature. Instead of chase and instant gratification, we begin choosing alignment. Quality over urgency. Peace over panic, and connection over control. Living with uncertainty. So life will always contain uncertainty. The question is, what will guide us through it? Fear or faith? Personally, my relationship with God and my belief that our souls continue beyond this life gives me comfort. Whether your beliefs are different or similar, the invitation is still the same. Unreal, thank you. It's good to see you again. So choose the thoughts that bring you closer to peace instead of panic. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So my final thoughts today before we do our breathing, and I want to thank you all. It's been a while. We've been on here a little over an hour, so thank you for staying if you're still here. All right. Our nervous system cannot heal while it's constantly rehearsing catastrophe. So the next time you catch yourself asking, what if everything falls apart? Try instead asking, what if everything works out better than I imagined? What if healing is already happening? And what if the challenge is preparing me for something greater? So let's take a breath and pray and allow yourself to say, I don't know. Because sometimes the greatest freedom comes from letting go of the need to control every outcome. Breathe, trust, and heal. And spend your energy imagining the life you actually want to create. Okay? So as we breathe in today, we're going to breathe in, fill up your tummy. So your shoulders will rise when you do this. Your heart will be open when you do this. You'll be getting breath down here. You're going to open up your throat, and your breath will come through. And so if you can close your eyes, but if you want to watch me, that's okay. But we're going to breathe. Take that full breath in, like was said earlier. And then we're going to hold it for 4 counts if you can, but just do your best. I know not everybody's comfortable with that, so be comfortable. And then just hold it for a minute. Think about how you want to feel. What do you want? What do you want, and how do you want to feel? Because you need to align with that and not have fear controlling it. Focus, exactly, Brian, exactly. So, Flying Brian. So we're going to breathe, Hold it for 4 counts, whatever's comfortable, and then release gently and slowly through the mouth, because I think we all don't want to be rushed. I think we all want to be handled gently and slowly, okay? Because that's how things happen. It's not instant gratification. It's gentle and slow. Because you're going to wish your life away if you keep going through instant gratification. You're just going to do it. That's what you're going to do. All right, so let's breathe, darlings. Y'all ready to breathe? Here we grow. Here we grow. All right. So, I'm getting comfortable on my cushion here. Take that deep breath in. 5. What do you want and how do you want to feel? And remember that it's Wednesday. Okay, so here we grow. Take a deep breath in. Hold it. And release. Gently and slowly through your mouth. Breathe in. Hold it. And release. Breathe. Hold it. And release. Just 2 more. Breathe in. Hold it. Release. Last one. Breathe in. Hold it. And release. All right. Did y'all hear things that you didn't hear, that you're not used to hearing? And did you feel your heartbeat? Did you feel your heartbeat? A lot of times we're so busy with life, we don't. I don't know if it works well having a CPAP machine on. It certainly would help to do it before you put the CPAP machine on. I do have a client that she has a CPAP machine. Yes. What it does is it regulates and regenerates. So it's always good if you're not if you don't have a CPAP machine on, then, if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling like things are out of control, breathe, darling. But, before you go to bed at night, if you wanted to do the breathing exercise, then put the CPAP machine on. That might be a good idea. I don't know about doing it with the CPAP machine on. Okay? All right, y'all going to remember that it's Wednesday and have a good day. Was this helpful for y'all today? Were you able to gather, and is it able to keep you in alignment? Because that's what I love about this channel. I love about all your comments on here about the alignment. That it reminds us that we're aligned, that we're not crazy, that we're Healing with Mama Love. Oh, you're very welcome. I'm glad you were here today. Thank you, Healing with Mama Love. I appreciate that, because my intention and motivation when I get on here, whether it's in the evening time or the morning time. Thank you, Viola. You're very welcome. You're very welcome, Flying Brian. I appreciate you. Absolutely. I'm so glad. Maybe you'll get to rewatch it if you'd like, Healing with Mama Love. Maybe you'll get to rewatch. And yes, my intention and motivation when I get on here, is to be able to help at least one person. And, I love connecting with y'all. So thank you. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please subscribe so you can get notified when I go on here. Because I come on Monday and Friday nights. Breathing. Yes, darling. Pammy, you got to breathe with me twice today, huh? Excellent. Thank you, Healing with Mama Love. So, And then I go live on here on Wednesday mornings and Sunday mornings. So I'll see y'all either Friday night or Sunday morning, and I'll tell y'all that story. You take care out there too, Brian, Flying Brian. Yes, and be kind to yourself. All right, thank you so much, Healing with Mama Love. I appreciate it. All right, you all remember that you're winners and have a wonderful Wednesday. Okay, lots of love. Bye.